All right, hello and welcome. Today we're going to tackle a really fundamental question for anyone in the audit world. What are tests of controls and why do they matter so much? Let's jump right in.
Hey, welcome back to the Audit Guidebook. It is awesome to have you here. And whether you're a seasoned pro just brushing up or a student diving into this stuff for the first time, we are really glad you're with us. Just to give you a little context, this explainer is part of Module 2 in our Practical Guide to Audit series. We're really focused on giving you those clear, practical insights you can actually use.
So let's kick things off with a big question, right? Anybody can look at the final numbers on a financial statement, but how do auditors really know they can trust them? How do they gain confidence that the system behind those numbers is actually solid? Well, that's exactly where tests of controls come into play.
Okay, so what's the whole point of testing controls? Think about it. It would be absolutely impossible to check every single transaction a company makes. I mean, can you imagine? So instead, auditors do something much smarter. They test the system itself. They're checking the machinery to see if it's running correctly, so they can trust what it produces.
So let's break that why down a bit more. There are really 4 core goals here. First, auditors have to confirm that a control even exists and that it's designed properly on paper. Does it make sense? Second, they need to see if it's actually working, like consistently, day in and day out. Third, is it doing what it's supposed to do? Is it actually preventing that unauthorized payment or catching that error? And finally, the big one, all of this is done to lower the risk of major mistakes, what we call material misstatements, showing up in the financial statements.
All right, so where exactly are auditors looking? Well, they focus their attention on 7 key areas where these controls are just mission critical.
And this list pretty much covers the whole shebang. You've got things like who's authorizing payments, making sure different people handle different parts of a transaction to prevent fraud, all the way to crucial IT systems and even physical locks on the warehouse. Now, we're not going to go through all 7 today, but let's zoom in on a couple of the really big ones. First up is a true classic, segregation of duties. This is like Audit 101, a cornerstone control. The idea is incredibly simple, but so powerful. You never want one single person to have control over a financial transaction from start to finish. It's one of the best ways to stop fraud and simple mistakes in their tracks. Here's a perfect example of what I mean. The person who approves a payment should never be the same person who records it in the books. When you split those roles, you create this natural check and balance. It makes it way, way harder for someone to, say, create a fake invoice for a bogus company and then pay it to their own bank account without somebody else noticing. Okay, next let's jump into something that is just huge today, IT controls. I mean, think about it. Pretty much everything is digital now. So making sure the company's computer systems are secure and the data is accurate, well, that's everything. This is all about controlling who can get into the software, who can change things, and who can approve transactions. A classic example here is user access rights. An auditor is going to go in and test to make sure that only the right people in the finance team can actually change financial records in the accounting software. Because you definitely don't want someone from the sales team, for instance, being able to go in and tweak the revenue numbers, right? Of course not. Okay, so we've covered the why we test controls and the what we're looking for. But how do auditors actually do it? What's in their toolkit? Well, they've got a few key methods they use to gather evidence. They basically rely on 4 core techniques. First, there's inquiry, which is exactly what it sounds like, asking people how a process works. Then you have observation, which is literally watching someone perform the control. Next is inspection. That's where you look for the proof, the physical evidence like a signed invoice. And finally, the most powerful one, reperformance. This is where the auditor actually redoes the control themselves, like performing the bank reconciliation from scratch to see if they get the exact same result. And this all leads to what I think is the most important part of this whole discussion, the so what? Why do we even bother with all this testing? Well, because the results of these tests have a massive impact on the rest of the audit. Here's the bottom line. If the auditor tests the controls and finds that they're strong and working effectively, they can breathe a sigh of relief. They can rely on the system. And that means they can do less of the nitty-gritty detailed testing of individual transactions, what we call substantive testing. But if those controls are weak or just not working, whoa, then the auditor can't trust the system at all, and they have to ramp up their substantive testing big time to make sure the final numbers are right. It's a direct trade-off, and it completely shapes the audit strategy. All right, let's do a quick recap of the key points before we wrap up. Look, if there's just one thing you remember from this whole explainer, make it this.
Testing controls isn't about the numbers themselves. It's about verifying the process so that you can ultimately trust the result. It is literally the foundation of an efficient and effective audit. Hey, and if you found this breakdown helpful, could you do us a huge favor? Go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe to the Audit Guidebook. It seriously helps us get more content like this out to you. And remember, this is just one piece of the puzzle. Be sure to check out the other explainers in our Practical Guide to Audit series. It's a great way to keep building on what you've learned today. So I'll leave you with a little food for thought. Imagine a company where the internal controls were somehow, magically, proven to be 100% perfect, flawless. Would we even need a financial audit at that point? Think about it. Thanks so much for watching.